Wow.
There we go. We're working. Good morning, Anthony. Peter's joined as well. Matt, hello. As I was saying, it's going to be a really big team today. Uh, so again, just welcome to everybody. We have been doing this now for 5 months, and in 5 months, it has been absolutely extraordinary. Thanks, Max. And those there when and quite a few of you were there when we did that first just that design session. Remember when we just said, what should we make, this, how should we make this work? And, from that process, there has been just so much work being done in the background. And today, one of the things I'd like to do early on is just give you a quick, I guess, summary of some of the things that have happened. And then what we'll do is we'll do some breakouts and we'll have a challenge, a question that you put to each other in the group. And then we'll come back and we'll keep going. We'll discuss a little bit more about the internals of the hub, how it's working, and some of the incredible work the advisors have been putting together, starting slowly as both the advisory team is growing, but also as more and more input is coming together. And then we will have Stephanie and Alex from the Australian Ocean Group walk us through the challenges of offshore renewables and the things to keep in mind, how to get involved, how to do, how to get, more active in that space. So without further ado, I would like to maybe just pass over to Anthony, and just as a big thank you to the team at Symphony 7, just really providing this space for us to do what we do. And maybe just a couple of words, and then I'll talk about some of the things that have been happening even just in the last month.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Vlad, and thank you everyone for being on the session this morning. What an amazing week it was. I have been hit very strongly by deep feelings of gratitude and also some feelings of despair. Gratitude because we just finished 14 days of isolation. My daughter played basketball at a site that became a tier one site, and we were asked to bunker down, which we did. And the gratitude came when two separate friends came and just dropped some goodies on the first day. Vlad was one of them. He came over with a couple of things, and then an enormous delivery from Woolworths supermarket. And when I went outside, and there were maybe 9 bags filled with fruit and veg and everything, I was just overwhelmed with gratitude as I looked at it. So much so that I took out my phone and I took a photo of it because I realized how lucky myself and my family were to get that delivery. And I realized that there's a lot of people that were not going to get that delivery, not today, not next week, and not next month. And I explained to my kids, yes, it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but when you're thirsty, what do? And the answer was you just walk over to the tap, take out a glass, turn the tap on, and get pure drinking water straight out of the tap. Too easy. And I thought to myself, how fortunate are we? Because if you're in this room here today, the chances are you have access to all that clean water and all that infrastructure yourself. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if everybody in the world had that privilege? And I was then struck with a little bit of dismay because my sister-in-law and her husband, they're traveling with their two young kids, and they're up in Queensland at the moment. And they have a friend who is a PhD in marine biology. And she said to them, while you're there, definitely make sure you take them out to see the reef because not enough action is being taken. And she feels very sure the reef is going to die in our kids' lifetime. And this is a marine biology PhD who has no reason to dramatize. And that's when it hit me. And I thought, wow, like if she's in touch with all the knowledge and she's saying that if we stay on the current trajectory, the Great Barrier Reef is going to die, it just hit me. And I thought, wow, is it necessary for that to happen? It's still reversible. Is it necessary for that to happen? And when I thought about that, it just gave me a shock. And I thought, wow, we're very fortunate to have Stephanie on today's session, Alex on today's session. Stephanie, thank you for agreeing to be a keynote speaker at the forum, which we'll talk about later in this morning's session. And I just thought we've got two options. We can be dumbstruck like the rabbit in headlights and do nothing, or we can stand up, we can lean forward, and we can collaborate. I know which camp I belong to, and given the fact you're in this room today, in this meeting today, I think we kind of know which camp you belong to. So it's a great privilege to have you here. We have our work cut out for us. There's a lot for us to do, and I'm super grateful that you are part of this journey. Let's go and make some great things happen together. Good morning.
Oop, there we go. So I realized I was on mute. Yeah, really. Thank you, Anthony. I really appreciate that. And there's, it was really nice that moment of connection that we have when we're in lockdown. When you can sometimes you can just share by doing a nice delivery of food to your friends, and it does actually it does change something in the energy, doesn't it? And with that kind of backdrop, I think that some of the things that we've been seeing in the last, in the last month, if not the last 3 solid months, it's been absolutely extraordinary, the activity. Some of the things here, and I've just made a short note. We've gone, we've introduced members and participants to those who help them with their funding. We're talking about trees, right? Julie, lots of crazy ideas that have been built around there. We've got development in all sorts of areas of conservation. One of our early members focusing on sequestration, connections, growth they're having, and we're seeing so many conversations now around how to sequester carbon, not just on land, on water as well, offshore. The recycling conversation has gone to the next level as well. We would probably say that, and there's a few people that couldn't make it, but they'll be on the call. But I know, so Matt Marsh and some of his partners there. So hello, Matt. They've got some incredible projects focusing on recycling and reuse. But the level of interest has grown exponentially, I think, in the last couple of months, and very close on the heels of that is the conversations around circular economy. We've got a few new members who have joined who'll be looking forward to seeing the video and also joining us on the Monday call. Really starting to bring together these national circular economy hubs. This is, an activity that is going to happen. Australia is going to be right there, leading the way with some of the thinking and models that can be used worldwide, but also implementing some of the leading models from around the world. So from a circular economy perspective, there's just so many different areas of focus, and we're going to see a lot. And this community is going to be right there. Many of the people and the organizations and the members that are going to be driving that change are coming from here, and the kind of relationships that they're building and the kind of connections that they're creating. And of course, energy. There is a lot in the energy space, energy generation. We're looking at projects that are groundbreaking in some ways, where, creating new energy sources where there previously weren't any, through to, really extending the life and efficacy of of what we're currently using. We're looking at projects in agriculture, for example, where there's a long journey before they move away from diesel, for example. And so how does how can in agriculture there be a real reduction in the emission, in the consumption of diesel, and so forth. So there's incredible projects. It's just dozens and dozens. And one of the challenges that we have is to how do we share that as a community? And that's one that we will talk about when we come back from the breakout. So what I would love to do is, just with that as a backdrop, I'd like to, instead of having the being talked to, I'm going to ask Anthony to just very quickly, and we'll do this first one in a random fashion, just break out everybody into a quick group for 15 minutes. And so
about 4 rooms planned. So it's about
sorry?
four or five people per room.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I think that's perfect. And it's great, just as that opportunity. So everybody maybe has, say 3 or so minutes to address this challenge. And we addressed this challenge in last month, and we found to be a really great way to kick off the conversations and start those and really start the ball rolling. The question that I have for you when you break out, thanks, Anthony, is what is the impact that you are creating? And how are you creating that? Just really would love you to share that. So what is the impact that you're creating? Like, why are you here? What is it that you're doing? And how are you doing that? If that's something that you can share with the group, and keep in mind that, in the community, we have those a range of different things. Those that have got the challenges that they're trying to, to sort through, those who are transitioning to, their careers to have greater impact, those that want to create, that manufacture, to allow those doing amazing things to demonstrate what they do. And so it doesn't matter what it is you're here. You've spent the time, you've come, you've found this community. This community is part of many communities, and you're connected to many as well. What is it? What is the impact that you are trying to create, and how are you doing that? How's that for a great way to introduce each other? Yes? 15 minutes? Anthony, send us away, and then we'll cut the recording straight after. We'll just welcome back, everyone. We had a couple of people join the last minute. So, Anu, Mitra, which group did you jump in with?
With Anthony and Pierre and Alex.
Okay. Did you get the chance to hear about anything exciting that they're working on?
Yeah, the electrolyte battery Anthony was talking about. Yeah, didn't really hear much, but yeah, I sort of got the gist.
Excellent. It's really nice when Anthony does talk, because when he does, the world listens because of the work that they're doing. And I know he's always got his camera off and his phone on mute, but they're working on some absolutely incredible, extraordinary technology that they have been self-funding, actually, which is also quite an incredible thing in Australia. So I'm really glad you got a chance to meet them. Was there anybody else that had something really extraordinary pop out? If you just, was something that really stood out for you that you'd like to share, that would be, I think it'd be really nice and appreciated by the community, by the team. Feel free just to unmute and just share what you found was absolutely extraordinary. Just feel free to talk straight up. Go for it, John.
Look, as I introduce myself to the group, I'm just beginning my journey and transitioning from career over the past couple of decades into this larger space overall. So I'm here to observe, and I already have heard 3 and 4 incredible people who are making significant, actual, tangible improvements underway and occurring today. So it's already heartening in these first 20, 30 minutes of meeting some new people and hearing some new ideas. It's really energizing. So thanks for the opportunity to listen in.
Was there one that stood out for you at all? Just out of curiosity, not playing favorites. Just
of course not. No. But Matt has introduced us to some ideas that he's working on and getting into action for recycling and upgrading of various commercial materials, polystyrene and the rest. And to my mind, and not knowing anything about that world, it's a mammoth undertaking. So I'm fascinated in just how you start to get your head around such an undertaking. So again, in those few minutes, very interesting. Amazing.
Thanks, John. Thanks so much for sharing. Anybody else want to quickly share? I'm happy just to pick somebody out.
That art group had amazing synergy. We were talking about different elements of the energy ecosystem, if you like, and Peter, as well as being heavily involved in the circular economy and plastic recycling, is also just getting involved in a new technology, hydroelectric device that we can get into the details, but I'm really interested in learning more about that and how it integrates with our integrate with our ocean energy program. And then Anthony as well is talking about different storage techniques and the ability to transport cheaply and effectively transport energy from remote sites to different locations in a way that's far more effective than the current form. So it's just an amazing tie-in. Great conversation.
That's awesome. And I think what'd be interesting to see too is that there's a few members in the community that are doing some very large projects. And if you've seen some of the previous recordings of being some of the calls, you know, the team at Earth 5R, we talk about them fairly regularly because of the size and extent of the projects that they're working on in cleaning up rivers, and then in reusing, you know, the waste and the plastic and so forth to either create energy or to recycle and create wealth for communities along those rivers. I don't know, the Meteor River was one of the, you know, first projects they're going forward. No wonder whether or not that might be an interesting introduction as well, you know, to Peter and the work they're doing. Oh, fantastic. All right, that's something to keep in mind. Last one, anyone else want to quickly dive in? One more inspired conversation. Stephanie, was that you? I said?
Yeah, no, I'll share. Well, I was really intrigued. Julie was talking about the work that Greening Australia is doing, working with upstream cause or impacts to the Great Barrier Reef, the river flows that are coming from land to sea, and the impacts that was having on the reef. But what inspired me about the discussion or learning more about what they're working on is thinking about how important it is for us in trying to have impact to get at the source of the problem and to try and identify those. And I know that there's been lots of discussion about circular economy, and we're trying to find those connections and close the loops, but sometimes there isn't always a loop that can be, you know, pulled together immediately. And so really understanding what those sources of impact are, sources of the problem can help us have big impact. So that was kind of resonated in my mind.
That's awesome, and I love that too. Yeah, it's almost like taking that circularity conversation to the next level, isn't it? There's impact all the way through, whether we're talking about product or whether we're talking about processes. You know? And you know, actually, you know, one of the impacts, and it's really nice, Mitra, that you've joined, because, you know, we'll talk about this. One of the projects that we're only just beginning is, you know, and to gather quite a bit of momentum on is these projects around the rehabilitation of mines and, you know, what that flow-on impact is. And I think that there may be a really great conversation to be had with Julie and Mitra at some point. We should probably meet, and also with Stephanie and what they're doing in the offshore renewable space. One of the things that, thank you so much everyone for sharing, I appreciate it. You know, I know it's always a bit funny when I put people on the spot after a call, go, okay, now I'm going to pick someone or volunteer. What were you inspired by? You know, but it's what we do in this community. And I wanted to take just a minute before introducing Stephanie and Alex to present on the offshore renewables and what the opportunities are there and what that whole space is all about. One of the things that is really critical to the way that we work is that we have a model that we've been developing and refining for quite a few months now, and the advisory team has been extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. So, you know, we have a brand new advisor, Claire. She's here. So Claire, she joins Julie and a group of other advisors. And what's really been visible for us is not just the structure of how do we come together and the kind of communities and group members we need, but it's also about how do we measure at the end of that. And we will see that in the next few weeks we're going to be sharing some really great progress, and we'll be looking for further feedback and impact, you know, and input from everybody. So just keep your eye out on that, because it's absolutely critical to measure all of the incredible collaborations that are happening, just like what I've mentioned at the beginning. So the community, it's kind of, I guess, a pre-intro to Stephanie, and I guess to clarify for everyone why it's important for us to focus on the infrastructure, not on just the cool technologies. It's really important because when we look at a structure, and if you can just imagine the structure of, you know, here we are in the hub, we're a community, there are many communities, we come together. To make this work, we must have those that do the incredible things, those that do the great technology solutions, great services. But we also need to have the pool. We need to have those that have the demand, those that work in government, those that work in the NGOs, those that are trying to create mass change or mass impact, mass benefit. They've got to also be in this community to pull it through. And supporting that, we need to have organizations such as those that work in policy, those that work in funding and investment. As you've seen over the few months, we've had those who focus on investment, those that are talking about the large problems. We've got the opportunity to look at cities, and we've had, there's one of our advisors, Lorraine, works for the city of Melbourne and a bunch of other cities, very focused on what is the need, what is the demand, what do people need, and what does our community need, and what does the world need. So it's very important for us to make sure that we have a very balanced approach in the hub. It's really important that we're not just about, okay, who's got the latest, coolest solution. We need the thinkers, and you'll see, as that when we do the breakouts, you meet the people, we need those that are just focused on their network to go, I know the people who I could bring together. We need those that have the issues, the problems that need solving, and we need that support. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Stephanie and Alex. They are both from Australian Ocean Energy Group, working on extraordinary projects, really are focusing on not just ocean, but actually all this offshore renewable space that is, it's not just an untapped resource. It's something that is there forever and constant and long-term and consistent. And, with all of the ups and downs of wave and so forth and weather, one thing that we know is that the ocean has power. We know offshore there is flow, and there's this incredible abundance, if we treat it right, of energy and prosperity for the entire world, not just what we can do on land. And I would love to welcome Stephanie and Alex. They are extraordinary people. They run a community. The Australian Ocean Energy Group is a member organisation. Just, we've been very lucky as STGX to be invited to participate and support. And I feel that we here as a community are going to really benefit from the understanding of what is happening with offshore renewables and how we can get involved as a community, with all different areas of expertise that we have. So, Anthony, if I could ask you just to pass to Stephanie, the co-host, so she could share her screen as well. Over to the two of you.
Oh, fantastic. Just allow me just a minute to share my screen. Am I sharing?
That's enabled now, Stephanie.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Just one moment. Okay.
Perfect.
There we go. All right.
Oh,
well, Vlad, that was just an amazing introduction. I really appreciate your those kind words and framing the context for being able to share with you today the work that we do in offshore renewables. And before I do, though, I just want to say that I've been joining this group for probably the last 2 meetings, or I think 3. I can't quite remember, but I just feel so honored and blessed to be part of this, because for so long, I've been in this industry for about 14 years now, coming over a little bit more than that now. And it's been such a struggle being in on the ground floor and trying to get interest and focus on to offshore renewables. But despite all the challenges, it really feels like the time is right, that things are starting to change. And there's a real movement now to think about these types of alternative energies and make a difference. And so it's really, and what I was also going to say too, is that for so long, it's also felt like it was pushing a boulder up a mountain and not really making progress. But being part of this community is really opened doors. And I just feel really blessed to be part of it, and really thankful for the opportunity to work more closely with Vlad and seek his wisdom and advice and helping us move this along. So it gives me hope. And then talking with all of you, I'm excited to hear your ideas and feedback as well. So
Thanks
anyway,
so much.
Yeah, no, pleasure. It's such a great excitement. And also it makes it all the work worthwhile when you're sharing it with people who share the vision too. Okay, well, anyway, I'm excited to introduce you to Offshore Renewables. And I think, as many of you know, as governments and industry around the world respond to the threat of climate change, a real opportunity exists to boost an emerging renewable sector that promises highly effective means to decarbonize in the blue economy. To date, energy from our oceans has too often been overlooked, despite the fact that is an energy source, as Watt said, with almost limitless potential to produce clean energy more consistently and predictably than any other source. And when it's combined, the thing that I want to share with you today that I'm particularly excited about is that when it's combined with other renewables into a microgrid, it can add huge value as a low-cost, reliable renewable energy source. So the question is, what is offshore renewables? Predominantly it is floating or fixed offshore wind and wave and tidal technologies. Ocean current, thermal and salinity ocean currents, ocean thermal and salinity gradient differentials are additional types that you may have heard of for offshore energy as well. But in Australia, the focus is mainly on offshore wind, wave, and tidal. Now, floating solar is an emerging technology, and it does complement offshore wind, wave, and tidal production, but mainly it's designed to operate effectively in calm or protected environments such as bays and harbors. So offshore wind, what it does is it harnesses the powerful energy from the winds that blow across the oceans. And wave and tidal technologies harness the high energy density from ocean waves or the ebb and flow of tidal streams. And the technologies that are used to harness this energy capture it and turn it into electricity, or sometimes it turns it into high pressure water or air, which can be used for production of energy, production of desalination and some other types of end uses. These sources of energy can also provide energy solutions for those coastal and remote communities which need it most. It's those markets that are seeking the technological innovations that can assist them in transitioning from diesel or end of grid reliance into a new source of energy. So what makes offshore renewables so beneficial? Well, it's the aspect of integration. And when ocean energy works in harmony with other offshore technologies, the cost can be reduced drastically through the creation of economies of scale and the formation of additional revenue streams. This illustration or the slide really captures the essence of this issue about integration. What you're seeing is a 7-day, it's a representation of energy production from a company, a Swedish wave energy technology company that conducted tests off California in the US. And what it does is overlay the energy production with the yellow, which represents solar production, energy production over the same, the 7-day spread. The gray represents wind production. And then the solid blue line is the wave energy production. And what you can see is that the real significant benefits of ocean energy is the ability to smooth out that intermittency between the other renewables. And as a result of that, that's where the increased revenues and benefits come in either whether it's grid, balancing the grid energy delivery to the grid and increasing revenues. So the thing is that instead of standalone devices, just a wave device or a tidal device, when we think about offshore renewable technologies and combine them to a system like a microgrid, it generates more power and it's more reliable, reduces costs, and it has real impact in terms of a decarbonization solution for end users. And it increases market opportunity as well, which of course makes good economic sense. So within the offshore renewable family, wave and tidal technologies have a significant benefit. So unlike offshore wind, that is a standardized structure, which we're all familiar with, those big wind turbines, in wave and tidal, there's no one size fits all for these technologies. So the devices are being developed that can fit shallow water, deep water, high energy ocean environments, low energy ocean environments, and many things in between. And what this does is create significant opportunity for decarbonization in non-grid markets. And the slide illustrates just a few examples of all the opportunities there are for these non-grid markets. It's everything from remote communities, aquaculture, desalination, and so forth. So it really opens up a lot of doors. And then again, when we integrate these technologies, the opportunities to have impact at the real source, at the source, can make a difference. The thing also, as Vlad had pointed out too, which is critical, is we need to think beyond just the technologies, and we can't overlook how important it is about the economic benefits that they're carry on from these ocean energy systems. So job development, of course, is critical, and in the ocean offshore renewable family, the skill transfers can happen from other sectors like oil and gas or coastal mining, other coastal industrial operations, manufacturing, being able to produce the technologies and the projects in the local area and have those economic benefits transferred locally. Being able to utilize specialized skill or suppliers, being able to build that supply chain like marine engineering or marine electrical operations in the ocean environment. And then of course, the local and regional benefits for communities and the smaller businesses that reside are critical as well. And a really big question and issue that is on everybody's mind, of course, is what is the impact in the environment? And I can assure you that the offshore renewable sector absolutely does not want to have any impact on the environment. And there's been a tremendous amount of research being funded and undertaken in many countries on the interrelationship. And to date, there's been no demonstrated environmental impacts. And in fact, it operates quite in harmony between offshore renewables and the environment. So I was excited to show you this slide because these are a vision of what's possible that represents the work being undertaken by two of our members. The picture on the left is by Carnegie Clean Energy, who's developing a wave technology to eliminate the use of diesel for salmon feeder barges. So that's for the aquaculture sector to address the problem there. And the picture on the right illustration is the company Waveswell, who actually has a technology being demonstrated in King Island right now. But their future vision is to integrate their technologies into breakwater so that it can serve dual purpose, both as a source of energy, like an energy plant, but also provide coastal protection and port protection. So it's just an example of what's possible in the future vision. And these are activities that are being worked on today. But like we've all talked about, like any great opportunities, there's always great challenges to go along with it. In our case, in Australia in particular, but this is not just limited to Australia, it's pretty much a global issue affecting offshore renewables. There are three categories or main barriers to commercial adoption, excuse me, of offshore renewables. The first thing is awareness and the understanding by the end users. Those at the source may not be familiar with what offshore renewables is. If they are aware, then there's always questions about how would they even go about, accessing that as a solution. And then there's certainly questions about the affordability, or in other words, the economics of transferring from something that is known and existing and operational to something completely brand new. So lots of challenges in that area on the market demand side. But even if there is the demand, there is another aspect of this, which is getting those systems to the market and to the end user. And to be able to do that effectively, there's four things that are needed. One is certainly a very well-established supply network. It's all those things, elements to create a strong delivery system, such as the vessels and the skilled engineers, port infrastructure, and so forth. But also critically important is a predictable regulatory scheme. I mean, time is money, and if the government is going to drag their feet in terms of permitting and consents, projects can languish, investment languishes, and it's a real challenge. So really establishing a scheme that is workable for the sector is critical, and what goes along with that is government policy. It goes without saying that public and community support where projects are occurring is critical, but not just at the local level, but certainly nationally and globally, it's equally as important. However, what happens is that when projects are in development, it's a local community that that can be most active. And then, of course, having a skilled project developers that really know how to deliver the projects. And the final element and major challenge, of course, that resides with so many projects, not just offshore renewables, but across the board, is funding. And it is especially a challenge in Australia. So the funding occurs at 3 different tiers. One is funding to support the entire development life cycle from concept to commercialization for the technologies. In addition to the technologies, then you have you have the project side, which is getting the money, the investment at the right place at the right time for those to support those projects, get those technologies in place and the system in place and operating. And then, as Vlad had mentioned, then there's the 3rd tier, which is the industry level, which provides the framework to be able to address the regulatory issues and nurture market development and so forth. So those are not easy challenges to overcome, but those are the challenges that the work that AOEG does. So having described that, I just real briefly I just want to highlight what our solution is, the work that AOEG does, and then I'm going to turn it over to Alex. So our approach in addressing those big barriers is a comprehensive 4-point ocean energy market development program. And it starts with a market investigation, which is to identify and quantify the commercially viable markets for ocean energy. So when I showed you that slide of all the potential non-grid markets, not all of them are going to be commercially viable. So what we need to do is assess all of those and then prioritize which ones will work the best or the most targeted for the sector. We develop a modeling tool to matchmake the end users and their energy needs to the right energy solutions. We're in the very early stages of evaluating 2 pilot market demonstration projects, one on each coast, to fast track demonstration of integrated ocean energy systems. And then finally, our cornerstone project, which I'm really excited to have Alex share with you, is our integrated ocean energy marketplace. So with that, Alex, turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. And I'd just first like to say big thanks to Vlad and Anthony for inclusion in this group of people that are not just talking about climate change action, but actually making change with deep impact. And I'm very proud to be a part of that. Those of you I haven't met, my name is Alex Ogg, and my piece in this puzzle is the project lead for the creation of what we call an integrated ocean energy marketplace.
Alex, can I pause you for 1 sec?
Yeah.
So, Anthony, are we able to get the camera onto Alex?
I'm actually watching and everyone else's cameras are on, but Alex, for some reason, yours is not. Is it switched on your laptop?
Terrific. All right, guys, so I'm leading this project, the creation of what we call integrated ocean energy marketplace. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but the next couple of minutes, I'll just try to demystify what we mean by that ocean energy marketplace, describe how we will use that as a market connection, and then link it directly back to the problems that Stephanie's just described and how it will help solve those. So what we're trying to do here is design a place where energy market customers that are looking for transition energy solutions can see, touch, taste, and feel an integrated energy system, and then use that resource to inform and guide their journey to find that ideal energy mix to help meet their clean energy needs looking out into the future. This will be actually the only resource of its kind in the world. There are places where testing of ocean energy devices is taking place, but there's no one resource where markets can actually have this demonstration of what an integrated system looks like. So we're looking at locating this in Albany on the south coast of Western Australia, which is just one of the world's absolute best wave resource environments. And the main purpose of this marketplace is to allow customers, energy market customers, to simulate their physical environment and then to use intuitive modeling tools within the marketplace to design efficient, low or zero carbon solutions, and then to work with project developers to actually implement a bespoke energy system which is optimized for their precise market and their needs. On a holistic level, this is both a planning tool and a matchmaking solution. It allows those market end users to match appropriate technology which is existing and also emerging to meet their decarbonization targets. And if we just switch to the next slide, Stephanie, I'll just give you a quick idea of what this looks like. This is a busy slide, I know, and I won't try to sort of do a deep dive, but this is the conceptual model of what the marketplace will look like from an oceanic-based perspective, and then there's a land-based component, which I'll look at in a minute. But what we're looking at here is a number of power generation devices, so the combination of wave, wind, and solar devices, and using those devices to demonstrate the benefits of an integrated system. And when we're integrating wave energy, in this instance, as Stephanie described, it stabilizes the microgrid and it actually reduces the cost of the overall power output. And to be able to demonstrate and model and show people that, we're hoping that will change the mindset and help lead to the adoption of the inclusion of wave and tidal devices in the long-term planning. These devices then feed into a central microgrid, so there's an actual power or cabling connection going back ashore. And that microgrid is the local distribution point for the energy generated through the system. We're also demonstrating through this a number of sort of cutting edge or leading applications for ocean energy devices in that blue economy market. So we're looking, for instance, you can see some indication here. We've got some powering of aquaculture, offshore aquaculture operations, some floating recharging stations, Anthony, which ties into the conversation we had in our breakout, the ability to actually recharge electric vessels supporting a number of different industries. Also important deep sea data monitoring devices that low power requirement, but very difficult to power through traditional methods. And also live feeds, video feeds, and things going back to the visitor center. And as I said, that cabling and also a conduit for seawater will go back ashore and deliver that energy to the shore-based interpretation facility, which is on the next slide. So this is just a rudimentary drawing here of what we're creating in that land-based resource. We've got a microgrid at the center of this interpretation center, again, for the local distribution of this energy, and some more pilot scale demonstration elements. So we're going to be using new technology for a low power desalination of seawater as one of the demonstrations. We're also going to be producing pilot scale green hydrogen. And there's an important link, again, with decarbonization of the marine transport sector, being able to harness ocean renewables to do things like produce green hydrogen and be able to charge those fuel cells on the marine transport sector. We'll also have, we're hoping to have a zero emissions vehicle charging station, which could be both electric and hydrogen, and also demonstration of a number of novel storage devices. The core purpose here, again, without delving into too much more detail, is market focused and providing a knowledge center or a base where market customers can have bespoke systems modeling and then the design and delivery of commercial projects out into their localities. There's also, I guess, embedded in here the necessity for an educational aspect. So the partners that we're working with on the land-based side already have a curriculum-based delivery for schools programs and the incorporation of university level lectures and demonstrations. This allows, I guess, the socialization of the ocean energy values and the ability to amplify throughout the community the messaging we're trying to deliver around ocean energy and benefits. So the question is, how does this marketplace, or how do we see this overcoming some of the barriers that we've already discussed? So we talked about briefly what we call the 3 A's that lead to market demand. So the market players will have access to this working interactive demonstration of an integrated ocean energy ecosystem. And it's the first of its kind where that's available in the world. They will also be able to improve their awareness through their interactivity with this system of the beneficial aspects that we've talked about of the renewable integration. So wave and tidal integrated with wind and solar, particularly for those blue economy markets. And we see that integration as the key meal ticket for wave and tidal energy into that developing offshore renewable sector. And then also knowledge around the affordability of an integrated off-grid system, particularly in situations where there's an absence of cheap public power distribution, so those end-of-grid and off-grid communities. And we see this as a very, very strong catalyst for commercial project development. There's already a strong regional interest in electrification through ocean energy, and then a groundswell effect throughout Australia and globally following on from that. It's also a key focus for government support. So again, there's no place that governments or policymakers can see this type of a system in action. And by having that in a public place where visiting politicians and VIPs and ocean energy innovators can meet, we're hoping that that amplifies that policy support as well. And then embedding this project in one of the state's largest tourism attractions allows for that public and community messaging and support as well. And through all of that, what we're really hoping for is investment. So commercial investment through the sector, through the ocean energy sector, and the generation of market demand. So that's really, in a nutshell, how we see this marketplace as a contributor to emissions reduction and decarbonization on a very large scale. And happy to take any questions when we finish the presentation, but I'll just turn this back to Stephanie for a wrap up.
That was a great overview, Alex. Thank you very much. So I realized we were pushing over time here. So just real briefly, thank you for your interest in learning more about offshore renewables. To summarize, what we see as our impact, what we're trying to accomplish is what's not listed here on the slide is that we're really trying to change the paradigm in our sector from a technology push to a market pull. That's a very big thing on a global scale. We're trying to, we want our work to decarbonize at the source to have real impact in terms of decarbonization. We're trying to work, we want our program to be a vehicle for de-risking commercial development through the initiatives that we have. And then of course, building community where non-privilege existed. So with that, I'll wrap up and thank you for your interest and be happy to answer questions as well.
Wow, amazing. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Alex. It was just, it's awesome. I know I always pass to the community first. Can I ask you a question? Why is it so hard? Like, is it because it's the no one size fits all? Like, why is the tech that's associated with the ocean, the land tech is so far progressed, whereas this incredible resource, we're seeing some are just starting to get commercial scale going, but it's really so early. Why is it so hard?
Oh, there's a lot of factors. I guess the main one is just working in the ocean environment itself. I mean, it is just unbelievably complex. And the challenges of working in an ocean where you can't really drive to it. For example, you can't just take a road and just go to your equipment or your facility and just manage it. These technologies have to have amazing survivability. They have to be able to withstand not only the weather conditions, but the corrosiveness of the ocean environment. Things like the critters that grow on these technologies can affect the maintenance and operations. I mean, little things like that. But then the bigger challenge in terms of the technological efficiency is its ability to design it in a way that captures, that harnesses that energy I was talking about. So the ocean, the movement of the water in the ocean is phenomenally powerful. It's more dense than air. But the technology to capture that and exchange that into electricity or pressure is an amazing challenge. And they have to, you know, it's a fine tuning of being able to design that in the right way to make it happen. And as I said, you know, these techs are being developed for so many different variables, whether it's high energy or low energy. So getting it right is hugely difficult. And sorry, just one more factor. I mentioned that what we're trying to do is change the paradigm from technology push to market pull.
Yeah.
One of the other biggest challenges we're facing is that these techs are not being driven from the market, from the end user. That is a really big challenge for our industry, that there's some amazing innovation. However, they're not being driven necessarily as solutions to the end user, to the customer, and to their challenge or need to decarbonize or to change their energy system. And that's even a bigger issue, because those technology developers are not engineering for those particular specifications as well. So,
yeah,
got me on my soapbox.
No, that's cool.
So it's a challenge.
I've got so much time and respect for the work that you're doing, and those that are in this space. Just feel free, jump in with a question. Anyone have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Maurice.
Okay.
Just Julie next.
To know with, I mean, in a lot of European countries, these new technologies often get subsidized quite heavily by the government, which allows the costs to come down, which allows sort of that initial push. These just, you know, when you're talking about the complexity of putting things in the ocean and how difficult that is to maintain, the cost would be quite high. So is there other ways to navigate that without the support from government at that large level, which just sadly doesn't seem to be, at least in Australia, happening anytime soon?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. What are the alternatives? And many of the technology developers, especially the ones that are part of our community, rely on private investment. And you know, they're building their own investment strategy and private sector support with supplemental grant, you know, government and grant funds for specific aspects of their development. But this is one of the key challenges globally for building this offshore renewable sector, is really having a sustained, defined funding strategy that goes from concept to commercialization, so that it can nurture the real innovations. However, the other side of it is still there has to be, and I think it would occur if we had the customers and the demand side really strong. That's part, in my mind, that's the part that's missing, which is why investment is hard and why governments are not really investing, because they don't think there's any customers or, you know, real demand for it. I think the government would change significantly if there was a mobilization of the end demand by the end users. You know, customers start saying, we want this, then I think government would respond.
Yeah, really agree. Julie.
Yeah, fascinating, Stephanie, thank you. What I was pondering is, you know, I can see the resource of the ocean would be a very powerful thing if you could capture it, and Australia is an island after all, so there should be potential. But what is in my head is when you compare it to solar and wind as alternative sources of renewables, which are much more proven and are reducing at the moment, you know, the cost of energy provision away from coal and gas. So if the government is, you know, not coming forward, it could be for a good reason that, that we can't see it happening. And the market, you know, will only come if they can see it being viable. So one of the graphs that you put up, which I thought that's interesting, was where you had that integration of energy sources, and you had solar really high, and you had wind and tidal being lower. And I was thinking, is that representative of the sources of alternative renewables? Because if it is, why don't we just go all solar?
So, Julia, sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Are you asking in terms of that visualization where we're showing the solar overlay with wind and overlay with wave?
Yeah, the solar was, you know, if that was representative, it was very high solar, lower on wave and tidal. So therefore, if that's representative, why wouldn't you go all solar?
Well, the big issue is intermittency.
Okay, sorry, that's why you did it that way. Yeah.
The issue. See, with the one competitive advantage, well, among several issues about competitive advantage of offshore renewables is predictability and consistency, perpetual and predictable energy. So wave and tidal in particular versus offshore wind provides that stabilizing mechanism to fill in the gaps between the intermittency of even in offshore wind. But there was the picture that was right at the bottom corner of that graph showed a conceptual illustration where it does make really good sense to integrate them. And that's what our message is. It's not an either or. And it does bring costs down for all of energy production when it's integrated. But when everything stands alone, that's where the problems are. I mean, that's where the costs are high.
Yeah.
So the big thing that the government's on about, particularly those that are in denial, is about this requirement for base load and certainty. So if you start talking about offshore renewables as providing base load, that argument's already in the media and already in people's front of mind. So if you start terming it in those terms, then the government's prepared to spend uncommercial amounts of money on baseload power generation. So perhaps that's the argument to take.
That's a really good point, is that tidal in particular is 100% predictable. It just provides an amazing opportunity for baseload. There's no question about that. Wave is predictable, but not at quite 100%, just because of variabilities of seasonal changes and so forth. So it definitely has the potential. And again, I just say that, you know, our message is integration, because when we start adding those technologies together with storage, it just is a phenomenal energy system. It can serve lots of different end users and get at that source of for effective decarbonization.
I think the other factor in Australia is that we're probably the most peripheral orientated nation on earth in terms of living around the edge of this vast continent. And the other thing that we've got in our advantage is just the breadth of time zones between the East Coast and the West Coast, that we actually cover sort of 15 hours a day of daylight. I think the other thing that you could market on is Western Australia's put up their hand to support this in Albany. You can imagine if you then play off the Liberals and the Labor against each other, you know, Dan Andrews is not going to be one left behind by Western Australia because they're so parochial. You use the realities of politics in Australia and probably leverage off the increased parochiality of, I don't know what the correct word is, of coming out of COVID, where everyone sort of become segregated in a way politically, to try and get these test beds up, both on the West Coast and the East Coast. The East Coast being quite accessible from all of the major research institutions and major investment funds and so forth, without having to travel.
Well, that's a good segue to one of the elements of our program that I mentioned, which are 2 pilot projects. We have one emerging in Garden Island, but the other one is in off Townsville, and it's actually in collaboration with the Australian Institute for Marine Science, who reached out to us to explore how ocean energy could help solve some of their problems that they're having with their scientific operations. So that's a really good point. And that's exactly what we're trying to do is set up these pilots to be able to actively demonstrate its potential and have something tangible to look to.
Definitely.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I sort of bring a question in this? How do you bring, because what you've laid out is a phenomenal kind of way to engage people and a phenomenal pathway to delivering. But one of the biggest challenges for you right now is actually bringing the funding in that allows you to construct the pathway that you've got a very clear pathway there. How do you, in the knowledge that you're going to get, you could get some funding potentially from, maybe state governments, but you actually need considerably more. Do people in the group have suggestions and ideas about how you might bring the early stage startup type funding to what you're trying to do?
Great question.
Let me build on that. Thanks for that question, Claire, because that really gets at the root of our work and the challenge. So, and it does lead me a little bit to share what we could do. I mean, what we need in order to help progress the work. So, first of all, the challenge is, I'm not even sure where to start. So, in Australia, we started up with grant funding, or beautiful startup fund from National Energy Resources Australia, and who's NERA, and I know many of you are familiar with them. The challenge is that NERA's funds, they provided 2.5 years worth of funding. That was great, but there was an endpoint. And unfortunately, even NERA itself, as one of 6 growth centers of the Australia's one of 6 growth centers, the Commonwealth is not supporting them to even continue their work on energy transition, which is really sad. So because they can't continue to nurture us. So part of what it makes me think about that is needed to drive us forward is private sector support. And I believe that right now, especially for the work AOEG does, is quite small. And it goes to the issue, kind of the question that Julie was asking as well. We've got solar, we've got wind, and it's all recognized. Why invest in offshore renewables? And I hope you see the opportunity. But what we really need to do is get big name, big backing, private voices, private sector voices behind this to have some credibility and clout and to be heard. And that's the part that I'd like to work on, and collaborate with all of you, because we really need to scale in order to have an impact.
And part of that, I think, just so John, I saw your hand come up. I just wanted to add quickly is that part of this is funding direct, for sure. And, so many VCs are designed for the tech, not necessarily the infrastructure and the work in advance. That's just the work. And so we do need that support, but there's got to be the government support and those that are looking at it from a longer infrastructure perspective. So maybe the larger funds, those that are more institutional, where they will take a longer view. But then, how do we make sure that is available way for them to invest? But 2, I would say that then there's also, just like you're having with the projects up on, Northeast Coast, the pool. Where is the pool? Because where AOEG gets engaged to support the solutions in locations, so wherever it may be, coastal scenarios, coastal communities where that energy they'd like to do it, who's the perfect organization to bring in from the consulting and funding perspective? The AOEG is perfect for that. Then the technologies as they come, they pitch in, but there needs to be that the expert body, the ones who are looking and being able to help those who actually have the pull. So I think in funding, we need definitely those, just like you said, we need the government, we need those who want to support the infrastructure because of the huge potential, especially if we're moving to this hydrogen economy here, right? So everyone is talking about hydrogen, green hydrogen. I mean, how many solar farms and wind farms can we build? We've got this incredible energy source right there offshore. It's viable. And then we need those who are in the cities, in the communities, in those locations say, I want to run one of these. I want this for our community. I want to bring in base load. How do we move away from coal and start to trial this? I want this. And I think this is really important. This will be, and maybe, I don't know, Debbie, I'll welcome you as well. I just think maybe there's an opportunity for your comment as well. And then John, I haven't forgotten you. So Debbie, you there? So I just was going to invite you to comment about, maybe communities pulling technology in to get some of these solutions up and running. Just what your opinion might be.
Sorry, go ahead. Know who Debbie is.
Debbie, hi there. Do you want to introduce yourself? Go do a quick introduction. I know you came a little bit later.
Sure. I'm Debbie O'Byrne. I'm the Circular Economy Lead at Lake Macquarie Council. So we're doing a lot in obviously the circular economy space, renewable energy. We're playing around with procurement contracts for purchasing renewable energy. But one of the things that, occurred to me is a similar challenge that we find is there's not a lot of investment in spaces, places, methodologies to implement at scale. So that's one of the projects we're trying to get up as a circular economy hub, where we would unpack a lot of the system issues that cause a lot of the delays in implementing these projects at scale. And an example is we've had a crew come to us in the last few weeks with zero negative carbon concrete, for example. And they've been working on that for years, a bit like what Stephanie's trying to do. A lot of research, a lot of technical expertise comes into play with these fantastic ideas. And what we find is it's really difficult to get a fantastic circular, renewable, low energy, low carbon idea into a system that's built for linearity, because a lot of the decision criteria is slanted for a linear economy. So what we're finding is they went all the way through years of research, got EPA exemptions for the material, and then they fell over with the RMS, who this was eroding material. They do lots of other things, but this particular one. And that's what we keep finding. These fantastic ideas are falling over around that implementation phase, because the system, when you have to tackle the system issue as you do the tech. So that's why I put in a comment about market development. We had some great ideas come out of our staff around how we would get far better outcome from one of our projects, diversion of material to reuse rather than recycling. No market. We couldn't find a single player in our region who could do it. So that's partly why we're interested in, getting up something like a circular economy living lab, because it deals with the problem in parallel. It doesn't wait for the tech to evolve and then find out, oh crap, why didn't we talk to the regulators, or why did we not talk to the procurement teams? $1 in $6 in Australia is public procurement, so that they're a big lever to pull. But the procurement system itself is built for a linear economy, lowest price. That is changing, and we've seen that in the the New South Wales waste and material strategy. And Debbie, so I hear your pain. We have similar challenges, and I think I had a chat to Vlad around this. Whether it's state funding or venture capital funding, there's a lot of money at play to do a thing or to design a gadget or a process. There's not a lot of funding to unpick the system issue that's stopping that going at scale. I mean, some of the stuff I've seen in New Zealand at the Forestry Research Institute, the amount of IP they were sitting on. I see the same here. We're involved in stuff with the uni. We're beta testing some products here on planet pricing. How do you price for planetary boundaries? But it's then getting that into a system that's built to make that hard. So I think it wouldn't be great to spin. I was actually thinking, God, that looks like a great project to put into a living lab, because I think you could grapple with the idea of actually this is incredible. And that you're absolutely right. You need to use that base load narrative far more powerfully. We're in a region that is at the pointy end of a just transition from coal. We actively want to be building an ecosystem of support for circular economy businesses, but businesses that keep jobs in this region or provide an alternative avenue for technical skilled jobs to work in a different sector. And that is a lever you can pull with government, because just transition is part of their narrative. We also have, the likes of Mullicop, who are trying to decarbonize their green steel. So I think there's opportunities probably further down the line to procure contracts for your energy. And the integration, I think you're absolutely spot on. We've got to stop building these things in silos and integrate and smooth the grid, find a way to make that. So too much investment in individual technologies while not looking at I think it was, who was it, the light bulb guy? Both of them invented it at the same time, but the one who won the race was the one who implemented the system of poles that went up in the city to get the lights out there. So I think that's the pieces we're missing is the systemic deployment of these ideas, and doing them in parallel, it can help it go faster.
And Debbie, that's exactly why I was really keen to have you just sort of share what you do, because it's so incredibly aligned with a number of the people here. I could imagine that right now, if I open the line, just anyone, there'll be hands, everyone's going to have something to say, because it's so valuable. Exactly what Stephanie had touched on, and that what you're experiencing. And I know that, even I see Bernie in the background go, yes, that's right, that's exactly what I'm talking about. There are a number of people working, very, very actively to solve the problems that they see. They know that there's issues. We've got to find the pool. And one of the things that I actually was really hoping that Stephanie and Alex would also take away from what you're doing in Lake Macquarie is around this, you're tackling that problem also from this living lab perspective in the ocean energy. And in fact, if we look at specifically the broader topic of offshore renewables, there is a real opportunity to start to pull together more so, even a bigger kind of hub, because you're building a living lab, right, Stephanie? Alex just went through, right, Alex, that you're building that. In Albany, you're building the living lab. So what are the learnings that we can have from the circular economy living lab and the design that you're doing? Because there's a lot of work that Anamitra and Debbie are doing together to create really amazing differentiator and pull through, which is super important. Maybe there's those. So I was hoping that you'll be able to have a chat as well, offline, because I think there's some incredible learnings to be had.
Cool.
And Debbie, I'm pretty sure that probably a number of people would love to get in touch with you, and then Anamitra, if you
absolutely,
have a conversation about what can happen. So one of the things that is important, and what I'd like to do is, John, I know you put your hand up before. Did you want to have a quick last word?
Eloquent answered the question that I had, which really
okay, no problem.
the viability and scalability, commercialization.
No problem at all. What I would love to do is I want to keep the momentum going, and I'd like to ask Anthony if you could do a quick breakout and let people just sort of jump in and talk with each other. And there's two things that I'd like you to test before we come back, and then we'll progress. One thing is, if you have something that has really inspired you about the challenge that AOEG is facing and what Debbie shared around the circular economy living lab, and more broadly, if you have a way to dive in, got some ideas, put it on the table and share it. Say, who would you like to connect them to? Who would you like to bring? Because remember, when we talk about this community, like a hub only really is powerful if we have those that do the solving, the service providers, the tech, but we've got to have the pool. This is really strong message. And this has been one of those, an extraordinary presentation, Stephanie and Alex, because it's exactly at the heart of so many things that people are trying to do. So the question that I have for you is, what, after that, this conversation, what would you like to dive in to support and help with? And two, if as a group you're feeling that, look, it's probably not our space or something I'm not sure about, what is it that you need in the group that you break out to, that you'd like to put up your hand and say, I really need a hand to shift this position that I'm in. This is the, so we're going to, I know how we're going on time, not too bad. We're going to try for 15 minutes. And when we come back, we'll do a quick wrap up and share, and just to allow everybody the rest of their Friday. Anthony, 15 minutes. The challenge is, what would you like to do based on what we've just been talking about to get involved in, support or help? Or if you've got a burning challenge, you want to put it out there and say, actually, I've also got this burning challenge. You know, what is it that you need to help you unlock? And put that to that group. How's that sound? Yes? And then we'll bring everybody back, 15 minutes. Let's roll. And we'll pause the recording, Anthony, as well. When they start coming back. I think we may need to let Claire back in. Anthony, just, I think she accidentally left. She dropped out as she came back. Welcome back, everybody. Here we go. People are coming back. Anthony Violi is smiling. That is a lovely sight. Hello.
Hello.
Is it because you're changing the world? All right.
No,
hey,
it's
Anthony,
because we're hanging shit on Julie, that's why.
All right. While everyone's coming back, tell us how you're changing the world.
Hey, Julie.
You.
Hey, Julie.
This is what we were laughing about, because Claire was very diligently listening to us, and then she said 30 seconds before we had to come back, "Oh, Julie, I've got to leave. Can you give feedback to the group?"
Oh, okay, that's right.
Was that Claire who said that?
Claire said
Claire,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great, because I was just SMSing her now saying it looks like you pushed the wrong button, but I'll let that SMS.
No, she's gone. But look, yeah, great stuff. We had a couple of good ideas. One was around the north of Australia being very, very tidal, and also has an Indigenous population spread all over, which could perhaps be, if there was a business case that could be put together to have that integration of tidal with other forms like the solar, to work for those communities into the north. So that was just one idea. And then Max had another good idea too, but you're going to have to help me. It was a group of people, but we can't remember their names. They're American based, that did lots of good stuff. So
it's basically activist investors that have been working with the big oil companies in Europe and the US, and they've actually gotten in onto the boards and the shareholder groups, and backed by huge VC companies and global equity, and I can't remember what they're called, but it's basically like an environmental activist groups that are working inside the organizations, on the boards, on the committees of Shell and that one that did horrible things over in Canada and stuff, and so that group is basically, they have control of global equity of these giant resource companies internationally, and they're able to push decisions and push investments. And so as they're moving away from like sand-based oil, offshore oil rigs, they can actually just replace those by putting in place these offshore power generation plants that are based off the tidal forces and waves and everything like that, as they transition away from fossil fuels and resource exploitation into renewables. And this is a perfect solution for them. They want it, and they will be able to have access and board representation to put the funds and investments into it.
That's really cool. That's awesome.
That's fantastic. It's going to need, Max, just building on that, that's such an awesome idea. There needs to be someone, somebody visible that steps up and does that, so they can start to point to it. I mean, I've heard about that opportunity quite a bit, but I don't see anybody yet taking that big step where they're going to put their name to it and be able to generate that visibility behind
No,
actually.
they want this solution. They're already changing the activities that these companies are doing now,
Okay.
and they will do it. They are basically, they've already said they are an environmental activist group working at the highest levels within these primary industry resource companies, and so they want this. You just need to contact them.
Find them. Yeah, I think that's it, and that's actually really great. And part of this is really just seeing that visibility of things, where as a group we see it, and when I know that those who will watch this later as well will also go, hold on a second, and I was just saying, as a group, use the LinkedIn community to connect with each other. I mean, we have that the mass group where people put ideas down, but also just use it, connect. Find the people that you need. Many of them are in that LinkedIn member group as well. So one more. Let's do one more. Anybody else? Something that really stood out from the group? And I noticed that through the chat, and Mitra, you raised, if anyone can do an introduction to the what they call the impact investment group. So I definitely can do an introduction too. But if anyone knows them personally, please reach out as well. Anybody else? Who else? Go for it. Just can't see everyone on the screen at the same time.
Just a comment to Stephanie, based on her presentation, some things that occurred to me where, it's a fantastic initiative that sits very well with the challenges that a circular economy living lab grapple with, which is the getting it into a system. But one of the things, just from a person who's a lay person, and some scenarios, somebody mentioned scenarios, I think that would be really helpful. That what do you do? What is your value proposition with your integration with other energy sources? How does that support a challenge that around the base load, for example? The base load is a narrative, I think, that would be really good to, surface up higher, because that's the resistance. A lot of the resistance is coming from base load. I hear that everywhere I go. So that's what you're offering, is somehow to solve that problem. And then if you could just show some scenarios where you don't do it like that, this is the ongoing problem with base load, where people can clearly see. With just some, there was a scenario analysis done a few years ago in South Australia on the quantifying the benefits of the circular economy to the region. And they did the base case, which is business as usual. Then they did resource efficiency. And then they did something else I can't remember. I think it was recycling, upgrade, resource efficiency, and then circular economy, 4 scenarios. And then they showed what that meant for GDP, for carbon emissions, and for jobs. And that, to a lay person, says, right, get it now. I get why that would make sense. So I think that would be helpful for people who are not technical. I mean, I don't understand your science at all, but that doesn't mean I'm not open to what your idea can do to solve my problem. But a scenario helps me see that better than the tech, the very scientific, awesome, trying to get better with the science stuff, Here for the scientists.
That's a great.
Trying to get scientists.
That's a great suggestion.
But as a lay person, that's what would help me.
I'm taking some notes here for Stephanie. What did you suggest there? Show what it means for carbon emissions, jobs, and one other thing. I missed it.
GDP. I mean, I resist the GDP. Or integrated reporting would be better, because the financial markets are moving to integrated reporting, which is 6 capitals, not just financial capital. So if you can frame it in a way that helps them show how they're delivering on the 6 capitals. I mean, the challenge with the SDG thing is, frustrates me. I keep seeing these beautiful 17 graphs and icons on all peppered through documents. But when I did my framework, I actually aligned it to one of the 167 actions, because it not all of them make sense for our priorities or projects to be aligned to. So if you didn't want to go to that level of detail, integrated reporting is a good interim step, because it's manufacturing capital, it's knowledge capital, social capital, all of natural capital. So how do you help that? And that also would help capital, investors or fund managers or big companies who are, the expectation is now that they start to report on integrated reporting. And you look at the big players like BlackRock, I can't remember the Dutch group, a lot of these asset groups are now signaling, like I went to a presentation where BlackRock said, right now, if you look at our investments as a pie, the tiny, tiny wedge of that pie are circular. we want to flip that pie, and our projects, they're developing their own circular criteria to decide which projects will get their funding. Because they recognize, and this is what I try to tell people, the circular economy is not like this new fad. It is rewriting the code of the economy. And the shift to the circular economy is just phenomenal. I mean, China adopted it as legislation in 2009, which is why we have the China sword issue, because a lot of that stuff doesn't fit inside a circular economy. You can clearly see this, the EU is signaling their post-COVID Green Deal recovery package is driven by circular initiatives. So I think it would be good for you to somehow find a way to align your narrative to a circular.
Maybe one of the things that we can have a look at too, Debbie, is that I know that if Max hasn't already contacted you and said, we need to talk, you guys need to talk. So Max is doing incredible things with his good.ai, and I am just mindful
Debbie,
of everyone's
100%.
time. Yeah, I think you and Anu together just need a conversation, because one of the things that we're looking at supporting is the circular space. We've got so much in this community. The circular economy conversation is so broad. It's really critical. So, but I'm mindful of everyone's time. So I just want to say, we never kick everybody off or anybody off. We can stay and continue to talk for as long as you like. However, there are those that will need to leave. And what I want to do is I just want to bring us full circle to be able to, one, say huge thank you to Stephanie and Alex. It was exactly the kind of conversation that we needed to have, because we're having it in the background all the time. We're constantly having it. And so really appreciate you taking the time to share that with us. When we have these sessions, remember, we always say that there's a push, there's a pull, and there's a support. Some of that work is around the work that we're doing in this Net Zero 2030 Hub, but we also support what used to be quarterly, and it's been a little while now with COVID. It's been a while since we've run the last one. Is the Sustainability Forum, and the forum is what we consider to be that peak event where we want to learn and share and have a very broad community engagement about sustainability and the issues that are around that, and we break it up into the streams. One of those, we're very lucky to have Stephanie and Alex, the Ocean Energy Group, will facilitate one of those conversations around offshore energy, and it's offshore renewable energy, and the what that means. We also have the team at Red Grid, where they are currently, we're not sure who's going to be presenting yet, but Adam Bumpus, the CEO, and we've had Alex present here previously. The crowd went wild, just like with yours, Stephanie. People's minds were blown, not just microgrid, but we're talking about mini grid and the connection. And it's what we're talking about. How do we make things interrelate? So Red Grid will facilitate a conversation around energy. And we also have BASF. And when Jan from BASF came and joined us here, I think it was last month, wasn't it? His words were, give us your plastic. We want the plastic. Chemistry solves problems in the world. And that conversation, has sparked off a huge, I've been so busy in talking about recycling in all sorts of areas, from tires to plastics to all sorts of things. Those are the kind of areas that so those three will be streams inside that forum. And what I'd like to do is invite all of you and everyone who's listening, and we'll obviously share it with a much broader community, to participate and to join in. And I was just hoping that before we finish, we always finish with a call to action. Anthony, could we use the forum as the call to action? Would you maybe say a couple of words and just let people know how to find the forum link that's coming up in August?
Sure.
September, sorry.
I can see it's 11:30. I'll confine it to 30 seconds. I've just put in the chat the link that you can use to go and register. I want to thank Christine, who's in the room all the way from the Philippines. Christine, thank you very much for setting it up, and thank you, Maurice, for setting up the integrations in the back end that people can actually register and we know what's going on. Can I just ask, can everyone please just click on the link, and can you please give me a nod of the head if the link is working? It should take you to the landing page, the Humanitix landing page. Okay, I've got 2 or 3 thumbs up. Okay, we've got numerous thumbs up. So the call to action is really simple. If you can go and register today,
Perfect.
That would be amazing. And if you want to support the momentum, is the word that's being used in the session today, the push and the pull, we will share with you on Monday or Tuesday of this coming week some wording that you could use to invite someone, a colleague, a decision maker, somebody who you think needs to hear about these things or maybe inspired to lean in and take action. We'll share that with you on Monday or Tuesday. But the call to action for today is just go and register yourself.
Okay. And we'll do the same model, right, Anthony? Like, so for the hub, we donate any of the money that comes in from this, we donate it all to B1G1. With the forum, where is the donation going? Where do we put that?
I'm cognizant of the timing. I know we're 2 minutes after. I'll ask Maurice and Christine to confirm, is this the one, Maurice, where you worked out? Do you want to answer that question? Or have I mixed up the events?
No, you've mixed up the events. We haven't figured it out yet. But
okay. All right.
So let's commit to answer that question by Wednesday of this coming week. But as always, we'll contribute a portion of the revenue from the ticket sales to a cause that actually makes a difference.
Cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you everyone so much. Really, really appreciate it. We will keep the line open. Feel free to keep talking. It's fine. But what I will do is just ask Anthony if we can pause the recording and say an official thank you to everyone.
Thanks, everybody.